Welcome to Cosmic Current. If you're new here, subscribe to my channel for news updates across the world. Imagine buying a new smartphone, only to find it costs more because the government added a special tax just because it was made abroad. This extra cost might seem confusing at first, but it's actually a common part of international trade that affects millions of products we use every day. That tax is called a tariff, a tool governments use to make imported goods more expensive and encourage people to buy domestic products. Tariffs are collected at the border, and they can apply to anything from electronics to clothing, cars, or even food. Tariffs are meant to protect local jobs and industries, but their effects ripple across the global economy. When tariffs are high, local manufacturers may benefit, but consumers often end up paying more. When countries impose tariffs on each other, it can escalate into a trade war, disrupting supply chains and raising costs for everyone. These disputes can last for months or even years, affecting businesses and workers worldwide. Over recent decades, most nations have moved toward lower tariffs and freer trade, joining agreements like the World Trade Organization to keep global commerce stable. These agreements help prevent conflicts and make it easier for goods to move across borders. But when a major power like the US suddenly changes its tariff policy, it creates uncertainty worldwide. Businesses may hesitate to invest, and trading partners might respond with their own tariffs. Tariffs impact the price of everyday goods, clothes, food, cars, and influence jobs, the stock market, and international relationships. Even small changes in tariffs can have big effects on what we pay at the store. The debate over tariffs is really about balancing the protection of domestic industries with the risk of higher prices and strained global ties. Policymakers must consider both short-term and long-term consequences. Governments must constantly weigh these trade-offs to ensure economic prosperity and security. The right decision isn't always clear, and it often depends on the current economic climate. Understanding tariffs helps us see how global policies affect our daily lives. From the food we eat to the technology we use, tariffs play a hidden but important role. Even if we don't notice them, tariffs shape the world economy and our wallets. By learning about tariffs, we become more aware of how interconnected our world really is. In early 2025, the Trump administration unveiled a bold and sweeping new trade policy, signaling a dramatic shift in America's approach to global commerce. The first move was to introduce targeted tariffs on countries like China, Canada, and Mexico, America's largest trading partners, aiming to reshape the balance of trade. The administration's stated goal was to address what it called unfair trade practices and persistent, large trade deficits that, it argued, had long hurt American industries and cost countless jobs across the country. But on April 2, 2025, the administration escalated matters dramatically, imposing a sweeping 10% tariff on nearly all imported goods, regardless of where they came from or what they were. Countries that already had high tariffs on U.S. products were hit with even steeper reciprocal tariffs, intensifying the standoff. The message from Washington was clear: lower your trade barriers, or the U.S. will match and even exceed them, no matter the consequences. To justify this sweeping and unprecedented move, the administration invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, declaring a national emergency over trade deficits and the ongoing decline of American manufacturing. This extraordinary step allowed the president to bypass Congress entirely and act unilaterally, concentrating power in the executive branch. Supporters hailed the move as a long-overdue effort to protect American jobs, revive domestic industries, and force fairer trade from foreign competitors. Meanwhile, critics warned it would raise prices for consumers, hurt American businesses reliant on imports, and potentially spark a damaging global trade war. The move was instantly controversial, igniting fierce debate and passionate arguments both at home and abroad. Businesses across the country feared higher costs, supply chain disruptions, and swift retaliation from America's trading partners. The world watched closely as the United States upended decades of established trade policy in a single, bold stroke, leaving allies and rivals alike scrambling to respond. The stage was set for a major legal and economic showdown, with the future of global trade hanging in the balance. The Trump-era tariffs raised a fundamental question: who controls U.S. trade policy? The Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to regulate commerce and set tariffs. Over time, Congress has delegated some authority to the President, especially in emergencies, through laws like IEPA. But IEPA was designed for targeted actions, not sweeping tariffs on all imports. Critics argued the administration overstepped, violating the non-delegation and major questions doctrines, which require Congress to clearly authorize major policy changes. The administration countered that the president needs flexibility to protect economic security in emergencies. This clash set up a constitutional showdown over the limits of presidential power in trade. The courts would have to decide where to draw the line. Legal challenges to the tariffs came fast. Small businesses and a coalition of states sued, claiming the tariffs were unconstitutional and financially damaging. The U.S. Court of International Trade sided with the challengers, ruling the president had exceeded IEPA's authority. Trade deficits weren't the kind of emergency the law was meant to address. The administration appealed, and the tariffs stayed in effect during the process. At the appeals court, judges questioned whether IEPA could justify such sweeping action. With both lower courts skeptical, it was clear the Supreme Court would have the final say. The outcome would shape the future of presidential power and global trade. The world watched, awaiting a precedent-setting decision. The Supreme Court took up the case. American Importers Alliance v. United States, recognizing its national and global significance. In a 6-3 decision, the court struck down the Trump-era tariffs, calling them an unconstitutional overreach of executive power. The majority opinion emphasized that only Congress can set broad trade policy, and any delegation of that power must be clear and specific. The court ruled that IEPA, meant for targeted emergencies, didn't authorize a universal tariff. Allowing such a broad interpretation, the justices warned, would give the president unchecked power over the economy. The dissent argued for more presidential flexibility in economic emergencies, but the majority prevailed. The ruling set a clear precedent. Sweeping trade changes require congressional approval. The president's emergency powers under IEPA were sharply limited. The decision reshaped the balance of power over U.S. trade. The Supreme Court's decision brought immediate relief to American businesses hit by the tariffs, ending months of uncertainty and financial strain for many. Importers could stop paying the extra 10% tax, and many began seeking refunds for what they'd already paid. This reversal provided a much-needed boost to cash flow, helping businesses recover from unexpected costs. The ruling restored stability, allowing companies to plan and invest with more confidence. With clearer rules, businesses could move forward with expansion plans and new projects that had been put on hold. Globally, the decision eased trade tensions and signaled a return to rules-based international commerce. International partners saw this as a positive step toward rebuilding trust in the trading system. Trading partners welcomed the move, opening the door for renewed cooperation and negotiation. It also encouraged dialogue on other trade issues that had been stalled. Still, the experience left a mark. Many companies are now diversifying supply chains to reduce risk, a trend likely to continue. Businesses are investing in flexibility to better withstand future disruptions. The ruling didn't erase the uncertainty of the past months, but it reaffirmed the importance of predictable trade policy. Legal experts say it sets a precedent for how similar disputes might be handled in the future. Businesses learn to expect the unexpected and to build resilience against political shocks. Many are now updating their risk management strategies to prepare for whatever comes next. The case showed how quickly trade policy can change and how deeply it affects the global economy. Investors and analysts are watching closely for any signs of future policy shifts. For now, the decision means a more stable environment for trade and investment, giving businesses a chance to rebuild and grow. But the lessons of the tariff battle will shape business strategy for years to come, reminding everyone that adaptability and foresight are essential in a rapidly changing world. The Supreme Court's ruling is a landmark moment for presidential power and the future of U.S. trade. By blocking the use of IEPA for sweeping tariffs, the court reaffirmed Congress's primary and central role in setting trade policy for the nation. Future presidents can no longer unilaterally impose broad tariffs simply by declaring economic emergencies. Instead, any major trade changes will require careful negotiation and new legislation from Congress. The decision reassures global partners that U.S. trade policy is governed by law, not just executive whim or sudden decisions. It strengthens America's reputation as a reliable and trustworthy trading partner worldwide. For citizens, the case is a reminder that Supreme Court decisions can directly impact jobs, prices, and the overall economy. By defending constitutional checks and balances, the court ensured that trade power remains with the people's elected representatives in Congress.